This is Michael Popok. Look at the time. Look at my glasses. It must be time for Legal AF After Dark. I don't know why I'm whispering. I've got a lot to talk about. I'm going to connect the dots and with my co-anchor, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, about a Colorado County elections clerk, a Michigan lawyer, and a DC defamation case brought by Dominion, and why one of them is going to jail for up to 22 years, having been convicted by a jury, and why the other is disqualified and soon to be disbarred because of her actions in a DC courtroom, the same DC courtroom where she actually got arrested and extradited back to Michigan because of her MAGA Trump position taking. Confused, interested, curiosity piqued? Tune into Legal AF. Here's a clip. Now we got to turn to all the crazy MAGA and conspiracy theorists and election deniers out there. They're going to take two forms now in this last segment of Legal AF. In one form, we got Tina Peters. Tina Peters, you may remember, was the Mesa, Colorado County clerk that went on the lam after she had violated election law and criminal law by allowing the Pillow guy and Overstock.com guy, Patrick Byrne and others, to break into the county election offices during the election and download and steal voter data, the votes of you and me, and then try to use it for their own nefarious purposes, including, misleadingly excerpting it out of context to try to make some argument about fraud that lost in 70 different lawsuits. Well, Tina Peters was finally caught, extradited. She was hidden by Mike Lindell for a while, brought back to justice, and it sat for trial. And we'll talk about what happened to her. And in record time, the jury came back in 4 hours against her, which I think, when we get to the result there, I think, Karen, is a message and a warning to all those hundreds of new election deniers who are taking jobs in election offices, who are flooding these offices and pressurizing these offices with ridiculous requests and demands for voter records in order to try to throw a monkey wrench into the 2024 election. The Justice Department and the Department of Justice and each state is going after these people. No matter if it takes 1 year, 2 years, or 4 years, you will be brought to justice. I think that's the signal for what happened to Tina Peters. And then we're also going to talk about one of my favorite stories, which I've covered a couple of times now, is the story of the Stephanie Lampert, who was the lawyer for Patrick Byrne, the Overstock.com guy, who also was in the Oval Office in December after Donald Trump lost, strategizing with Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell about how to seize voting machines, suspend the Constitution, and impose martial law. That guy. And so think about that next time you shop at Overstock.com. So Stephanie Lampert is his lawyer, but that's not what the federal magistrate judge Upadhyaya thought her real role was, and called her out on it, sanctioned her, and disqualified her. And my favorite little tidbit, I'll turn it over to you now, Karen, is that back in March, while she was appearing, she's a Michigan lawyer, while she was appearing in federal court with Judge Upadhyaya, at the end of the hearing, the judge asked everybody to leave and for Lampert to stay behind, like the principal. She got called to the office, and in came marshals and law enforcement to arrest her and extradite her because she failed to appear on a bench warrant in Michigan because she'd been indicted for Michigan for tampering with election equipment owned by Dominion Voting Systems, the very entity that she was a defense lawyer against in a defamation case representing Patrick Byrne. That's the complicated, curious story of her. What did piece it all together from a prosecutor standpoint? What happened to Peters, the clerk? What do you think is going to happen to Lampert, the lawyer? And what do you think it means as prosecutors draw a line, and the Department of Justice draws a line in the sand as we come into the 2024 election about other people that think they're going to commit mischief?
Yeah, well, first of all, talk about being able to vote with your wallet. I mean, I never even realized before how much that can make a difference, right? Look at who our pro-democracy sponsors are. These sponsors that we that we promote on our podcast are people that choose us too, right? We choose them, they choose us. They know what our message is, and this is where they choose to advertise. And similarly, look at the MyPillow guy and the Overstock.com guy, and now Elon Musk, frankly. And I do think people have to realize that you're not just buying products anymore. Sometimes you are, but sometimes you're also supporting you're supporting a particular point of view. And in this particular case, it's just unbelievable to me that that these individuals, are this is like a criminal enterprise, frankly. All the MAGA people, I just can't get over it. It's one thing to say, hey, I voted for a Republican and I believe in Republican values and I believe in there should be bigger government or smaller government or pro-choice, pro-life. You can have, I think, debates about issues in this country. That's the beauty of this country. But the MAGA movement is not Republican. It's not conservative. It's truly people who will. It feels more almost like a cult. I hate to use that lightly, but it does. The people who are just willing to throw their lives away and engage in criminal behavior on behalf of these crazy conspiracy theories. And the two cases that you're talking about and that we're talking about here tonight are just two more examples of that. It's shocking. And so one of them is this pro-Trump lawyer that you were talking about, who's essentially facing criminal charges right now in Michigan for accessing those voting machines after the 2020 election. She was just disqualified from representing the Overstock.com CEO, Patrick Byrne. Okay. So he is there's a lawsuit by Dominion voting machines, similar to the one where they won from Fox News. This one, though, is I think they're seeking over $1 billion from Patrick Byrne, and there's this ongoing lawsuit going on, and this lawyer was representing Patrick Byrne. At the same time, she gets indicted in Michigan for breaking into the voting machines there. And there's a court order in the Dominion case, right? There's a court order telling the lawyer and Byrne saying, you can't share any of this is all of the documents that in discovery that are being turned over are under a protective order. You can't release them. And what do they do? This lawyer, her name is Stephanie Lambert. What does she do? She releases them in her Michigan case to not only help her criminal case, but also to spread further information. And so it's just outrageous behavior. Like, again, as a lawyer, it's just shocking to me. I'll never get used to it. I'll never get used to what these lawyers for Trump are willing to do. One day someone's going to come forward and say that there was some kind of magical hypnosis or something causing everybody to go insane and lose their mind and do things that are just not remotely legal, normal, ethical, or anything that I recognize as a practicing lawyer or an American citizen, frankly. And so Stephanie Lambert has now been barred from representing Byrne in this lawsuit by Dominican voting system. She's been disqualified over these violations. So, again, despite this court order saying you can't release these records, what does she do? She releases them. And this magistrate judge just really smacked her down and issued, I think, a 60+ page opinion. And most of it is just listing all of her violations, right? It's just listing them one after another, and found that this lawyer, Lambert and Byrne, unilaterally decided to disclose thousands, if not millions, of Dominicans' case documents to outsiders, and continued to promote just disinformation, and they did it despite all the warnings not to, and they made misrepresentations, and frankly, there was dangerous. I think the quote that I wrote down that the judge wrote was, her intentional, dangerous, and relentless misconduct shows no regard for orders or ethical obligations as an attorney. And the judge also went on to find that this wasn't an inadvertent breach or good faith, disclosure. This was intentional and caused harm, including threats lodged against the Dominion's CEO. So the judge found this is truly egregious misconduct and required disqualification because it could infect future proceedings. I think she's going to get smacked down in a big way in Michigan as well for doing this. I'm surprised she can even practice law given all of this.
Everything you just described has happened since March. This is August. So I've been involved with cases that I just settled a case last week in Chicago against a major institution there that I filed 4 years ago in 2020, and we just settled it last Friday. This lawyer got retained in March. She committed 32 pages worth of misconduct and contumacious behavior, to the point where this was my favorite line from the 63 pages, Karen. The judge said that Lampert's repeated misconduct raises the serious concern that she became involved in this litigation for the sheer purpose of gaining access to and publicly sharing Dominion's protected discovery. In other words, she's just a Trojan horse. She had no intent to really be a lawyer for Patrick Byrne, and Patrick Byrne is behind it. So for people that think, wow, that's terrible, the guy lost his choice of lawyer. No, Patrick Byrne used her as a vessel, as a conduit to obtain information against Dominion voting machines that was supposed to be confidential and only used under court order in that case, to then funnel it to the MAGA right conspiracy alt-right wing of the party. Everybody from the constitutional sheriff Dar Leaf to every podcast you've never heard of got something out of Lampert and Byrne. And Byrne is the puppet master. That's the dirty little secret that Upadhyaya doesn't come out and say, because she doesn't have to address that in disqualifying her. But Byrne is behind it all. And all the roads lead to Byrne. In fact, Byrne, speaking of, I know this is going to get your dander up, Karen. Speaking of party litigants who attack verbally with threat of violence prosecutors, Patrick Byrne just attacked and said that they better watch out. The prosecutors of Tina Peters, back to our Tina Peters part of the story segment, the prosecutors of Tina Peters better I don't think he understands how the justice system works, better let her out and I guess wipe out somehow her conviction by a jury in 4 hours, record time on 9 out of 11 felony counts. Because if they don't, listen to this one, Karen, they better watch out for being strangled with piano wire and some sort of a bomb or a flamethrower. I'm like, did he just threat? Now, if the prosecutors in Michigan don't bring him to task and bring that before the judge there and prosecute him for making those threats, then I'm just going to throw up my hands here. I mean,
law enforcement saying they would face a piano wire and blowtorch if they didn't drop the case.
Yeah, that's why I said piano wire, and I said whatever.
That's outrageous.
Yeah. So what do? My point is, don't they have to prosecute him?
It's no worse than all the things Trump did.
But don't they have to prosecute him?
You know what? Then they got to go after Trump for all of his, yes. And they have to go after Trump for all of his threats and violent. Like, this has become the norm of MAGA. This is coming from their leader. This is what Donald Trump does and says without any consequence in all his cases. He goes after law enforcement. He goes after prosecutors. Look at what he did in Mar-a-Lago, basically lying and saying that they issued assassination and deadly physical force. And then you had Jack Smith coming forward saying there have been threats to FBI agents. I mean, there are real life consequences and they all get away with it. So I think not only do they have to prosecute him for it, but they have to start holding Donald Trump accountable for his vicious, vile, vitriolic.
Hold them all. It's not an either or. Go after all of them. But
yes.
These prosecutors that are sitting around, some of them who are sitting around kind of doing the calculus of, forget the calculus. Be like the attorney generals, mainly women attorney generals around the country that are going after the fake electors. Sure, they made a calculated decision about Donald Trump, but they're cleaning up behind the elephant of the federal prosecutors, and they're bringing all these people to justice. And if you get threatened, I'm sorry, that's like the old Untouchables, the Chicago way. Somebody comes after you with a knife, you go after him with a gun. And the prosecutors have the ultimate gun. They can criminally prosecute somebody for making threats against the prosecutors. No other way to interpret it. Because if you don't reinstall the guardrails of our democracy and reinstitute our social contract, which is what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to do, then what are we? Then it's just a Hobbesian future where there are no rules. We're living in anarchy. We're back in a jungle. I mean, nobody wants that. That's the greatest thing that I've been watching with the growth's the wrong word, with the leadership demonstrated by Kamala Harris in her campaign. It's what Tim Walz called the joyfulness by which she campaigns and will lead this country, installing and instilling joy again into the country. Forget that the dystopia, the American carnage outlined by Donald Trump. He just did a social media post. Trump himself did a social media post, a racist one that would have made the people that came up with the Willie Horton ad proud, in which there's a split screen. This is your neighborhood if Trump's elected, and it's like a white, picket fence neighborhood and then this is your neighborhood if Kamala Harris is elected. And it's a photo taken out of context of people who are trying to obtain immigration status lined up at a facility in New York. Keep the teeming black and brown people away from America. Vote for me, Donald Trump, the white guy. I mean, come on. That's what he's doing. I'm putting each other at each other's throats, but would we not go back to where we were with Barack Obama and other great leaders, where there's a joyfulness, there's a whistle on our lips and a bounce in our step again about being patriots, about being Americans, about reaching out, instead of doing what we all do reflexively, including me, when you see a Trump flag in your neighborhood, I would love to go in the middle of the night and tear that down. I want to get to the point where Kamala Harris is elected and I go over and extend my hand to that neighbor and say, I don't agree with any part of your politics, but you are my neighbor. You are a fellow American, and I appreciate your right to do what you want, but you have to appreciate my right to coexist. I want to get back to the social contract. I want to get back to our constitutional republic that's been so sullied. It's just Donald Trump dropping his pants and lowering his zipper and peeing all over America. Enough. It's like enough. Welcome back. We do that show twice a week. We call it Legal AF for a reason, and now you know why. It's every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this MeidasTouch YouTube channel. And then you can pick it up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. If you know about Legal AF and you're already part of our audience or our organic growth, we really appreciate you. We're building this independent network with our bare hands without outside investors. Take that clip and send it off to people in your life and ask them to join, and we can continue to grow this podcast, this content, and this independent network with your help. If you don't know anything about Legal AF, that was Legal AF. Join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can just plug in to any audio podcast platform that you use, Legal AF, and you'll get right to us. Lawyers talking about things, they know what they're talking about at the intersection of law and politics. How refreshing on YouTube. Until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.